Hi, we're back. Hi, everyone. We're calling in from COP30 in Belém. This is day 3, and I am with Ellie Besley-Gould. Ellie Besley-Gould is with the Sustainable Shipping Initiative. Hi, Ellie.
Hi, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I am good. When did you arrive at COP?
I arrived on Monday, and I can't believe it's day 3.
I know. I think
7.
I've lost a day in the sweat, body weight anyway, since being here, but it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to have you here because you're with the Sustainable Shipping Initiative, and so I want to know, first, a little bit about you. What's your background, and how did you get into shipping?
So I've spent the last 20 years in climate transitions, whether that's energy transition, food transition, sort of wider community engagement, and largely it's always been about systems change. So who are the actors? What are the narratives? How do we meet people where they are? And how do we integrate that whole value set so that we can make change happen? Shipping kind of, for me, is the piece that integrates it all, right? Because, I mean, I'm sure everyone already knows this, but 80% of the goods we touch are taken by ship. Like, that is enormous, and it's this unbelievably invisible industry that, unless you're in it, is rarely known about. So it's just fascinating, like me, for a long time.
I've been talking about this for actually about 3 years now, how it's sailed under the radar for about, I know, dad jokes for all of you out there. Anyway, that it's managed to avoid notice, for example, for this amount of time. But as you said, you've been in the business for 20 years looking at this transition, where I think a lot of us think of it in that last 3-year period. Since the 2023 IMO, the International Maritime Organization, greenhouse gas strategy was launched in July of that year, it seems like, it evolved out of that moment. But of course, it's been around since the 90s, if not before.
Yeah, and actually shipping is chugging away. Another one for you.
Love it.
Shipping's been chugging away for an unbelievably long time, and the transition, although all that amazing work that's happened at the IMO has really stepped things up, the transition in the industry has been happening for a long time, and the industry players within it across the value chain have made real commitments to decarbonising. So there's a huge amount of work going on,
Yeah, and I think that brings us really neatly, actually, into the Sustainable Shipping Initiative. Right. So as I understand it, and I've been very privileged to be on a few of the events that the SSI have been putting on over the years myself, and it's 15 years old, right?
Yeah.
What is the SSI? What does it do? What is its purpose?
It's a fantastic organisation. We're a membership organisation, and we work with members from both industry and from the NGO world, which means we have a very unique space in the sector, which kind of both drives policy and advocacy and that huge ambition that we need to see to decarbonise and do all that other environmental and social sustainability work. But it also thinks very commercially about how that's possible so that we can bring industry on that journey. And we work with typically first movers and fast followers, so the folks in shipping who really want to see change happen, who are driving that transition, and who are really thinking about how that can impact on the wider industry and how we can bring that long tail of industry players through the journey with us.
How am I trying to say this now? I'm just trying to think of these first movers. We work with them so frequently. These people that are really at the forefront, the cutting edge of wanting to decarbonize, to transition away from these fossil fuels. But then, of course, there's the rest of the sector that we need to be bringing along with us. Is that part of this, the initiative's kind of influence?
I suppose the thing that sort of separates out members from the rest of the industry is that they are first movers, but they're also then setting how it's achievable. So they're sort of de-risking, if you like, for the industry. And if you look at the rest of the ship, if you take ship owners, for example, most fleets are less than 5 ships large, which means that in order to think about transition and change in any context, the commercial model is really tricky. So if we look to the larger, more forward-leaning players, they're able to kind of think about how we can transition and then build that model that either sets the tone, like encourages regulation to support, or really thinks about how we build the incentivization structures around it to encourage the rest of the industry.
I mean, that's incredible. Actually, it's really that's so key. In order to move anything forward, you set the standards basically in order to see how the industry itself can move, and with a little bit more certainty, as it were.
And I don't know about you, but certainly for me, and all of the sort of, I don't want to say primary producer because that's a sort of farming term, but if you want to, if someone asks you to do something, you're much more likely to listen to someone who does the job that you do.
Absolutely.
So ship owner to ship owner, ship manager to ship manager, really thinking about how we encourage change by thinking about what works and using that peer-to-peer network, rather than me, NGOs, saying, you know, you must do X, Y, Z. It's much more beneficial for our membership to say, look, get in the water is lovely because we've tried it, and actually it's supporting our commercial model as well as that sustainability piece.
Yeah, get on board, basically. Another pun, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Number 4.
I love it. We'll try and keep going. So that brings us on then to this roadmap that SSI have. Can you explain a bit about the roadmap moving forward?
So I think I'm biased, but it's a brilliant roadmap. And essentially what it is it's a look at the shipping industry across 6 key areas.
Yeah.
So oceans, people, communities, finance, transparency, and energy. So we see those as the major 6 areas around which environmental and social sustainability needs to be driven. And the roadmap has key milestones against each decade to 2050 that we see as the way for the industry to move towards transition. And they are high ambition, they are quite high level, but they allow us to then say, okay, this is where we're trying to get to. What's already out there? How can we communicate that with our membership and with the wider industry? What are the gaps where we need to see either additional implementation, additional regulation, additional financing? You know, you sort of name what it is the gap is, and then how can we galvanize folks to come together around solving those gaps and filling in that information?
Yeah, oh my goodness, excellent. So if we focus in on that first part, let's talk oceans.
Yeah.
Oceans, ocean health. I hear you've got a toolkit coming out.
We have got a toolkit coming out.
What is this toolkit? It's getting launched any second now.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's launching today or tomorrow, and sort of TBC on the exact timings depending on which country you're in, if I'm honest, because my comms team are in Asia, and then we've also got partners in the UNF in the States.
Oh yes, of course.
And then obviously we're in Brazil, and then the organisation is registered in London. But the toolkit. So so just backtracking a little, we've been doing oceans work, this current piece of oceans work, for a couple of years, and it started with a roadmap that was developed specifically diving into that oceans piece and marine biodiversity and ocean health. And we formed a sort of loose coalition around marine biodiversity and ocean health with a view to looking at what we could do in shipping to reduce the negative impacts of shipping on the ocean health by each decade, so 30, 40, 50. And the roadmap is really interesting. So what it does is it sort of boils down to, again, those very high ambition, where we want to get to pieces of work. But the sort of challenge, of course, when you have a roadmap with high ambition is that the industry is quite far from there. And so we've done a few things on the way. What we've done initially is looked at working with industry actors, whether that is real economy players, whether it's NGOs, whether it's communities, initiatives, whatever it is, and looking at that broad spectrum of work that's going on ocean health. And I can get into some of what's in there. And we released in September a guidebook, which is like a tome, it's a Bible of anything you could ever need to know about ocean health that's happening right now for shipping. And the industry will then, when I speak to our membership, when I speak to others about ocean health, that there's a real appetite to get involved in making change happen. But the truth is that they really need to know more, and they need to know more about how to make decisions, and also what works and who's doing what. And then how do we make that boardroom relevant without wanting to be too crass? How do we boil it down to terms which our CFO can understand and therefore prioritize?
Yeah.
And the toolkit is one of the steps towards getting there. And what it does is it says, across the 7 areas for marine biodiversity and ocean health, it then says, okay, if you are an owner, if you're an operator, if you're a port, if you're a charterer, if you are a coastal community, whatever you are, you can go to a section in the toolkit and it will say, okay, you want to know about whale strikes? Here's some best practice. Here's the businesses doing the work. Here are the tools you can use. Here are the gaps. Here's the regulation. And here are the people you can partner with. And the beautiful thing about the toolkit from my point of view, and certainly in working with our advisory team at the UNF and with the Climate Champions team, is that it's genuinely a living document, and not in that kind of cringy NGO way, but it really is the first version, and we are inviting submissions. We're building a community around it. The next step is just going to be bigger and bigger and bigger. So the more folks who we can get to contribute to it, the more rich it is with information and initiatives, the better. And we're just building on how we can serve the industry to better be able to move into a space for reducing harm.
I mean, honestly, as an academic, on some of the things that we're doing, we're building that idea of a living document. I think that idea is like, people are, what is that? I don't understand that. All that is that we're continually inputting and updating the information as we get it. And when you're looking at carbon emissions in my particular case, but ocean health in this case, for example. These are or whale strikes from ships, for example. It's understanding, and the more data we can feed into a toolkit like this, the more we understand, or a ship owner, for example, can understand how to use it.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually, when you mentioned decarb, one of the most interesting things, certainly I've taken away from this work, is that when we think about co-benefits, that is where there's real leverage for the industry. So, for example, if we look at biofouling, Jotun have paint which supports clean hulls and really encourage our ship owners and our charterers to think about how we keep our hulls clean. That has an efficiency gain, which is an enormous thing for emissions, but it also means that we reduce the amount of biofouling that's happening, which is such a brilliant co-benefit. And what we lack currently is the sort of global level data around the impact that we can have. And then subsequently, what I'd like to see in the sort of medium term, which is the next stage of our work, is how we build a KPI set based on the data that we can collect and that the industry is willing to collect, to really look at that.
Okay, great. Look, I'm very excited to look more into this toolkit. We'll put a link into the toolkit into this, and hopefully we can we'll learn, and I will learn from this toolkit as well.
Feedback.
Absolutely. And I guess a final quick question. We're at COP30. We're in Belém. It's your first time in Brazil?
My first time in Brazil.
My first time in Brazil as well. I'm absolutely loving it, every moment of it. We're under this globe at the side event place. It's a space here at COP30. What can you say about? You've been here since Monday. It's only day 3, so we're only a couple of days in. Is there anything you're specifically following here at COP that you are finding interesting?
I think, if I'm being completely frank, when I got here on Monday, I thought, this is a bit too candid maybe, but I really thought, is it worth it? Is it worth traveling all this way, these hundreds of thousands of people? And I'm such a believer in the UN, and I'm such a believer in the COP process, but I really needed to see the value, and immediately I got it. And that's kind of always the way with me in COP. Like yesterday, I seemed to sort of accidentally fall into a day of clean fuels largely.
Yeah.
And the Secretary General of the IMO, I saw him speak in the Denmark Pavilion, and the thing that really got to me in that event was, I saw him a few times, but in that particular event was he just said the IMO will not stop. And that for me was kind of a game changer, because it reminded me that the process continues. So whilst we may have seen a delay at the IMO to the back end of next year, that doesn't mean the work stops. And actually the work is continuing to make everything better and more achievable. And that was my first take home. The second was, I was listening to Maersk talking about their own transition.
Yes.
And they're not waiting. They're not waiting for permission, and they're not waiting for regulation. They are just going for it. And that's really exciting to me, because they set an indicator for the rest of the industry. And then the final piece for me was around biofuels. And I think at London International Shipping Week, we had a lot of chat about biofuels because IMO was on the horizon. And then it kind of dipped down for a little bit there. And actually, the energy there is enormous now. And I heard so much great commitments. And it wasn't even new commitments. It was already decided commitments which are now being implemented. And I think the take home for me about this COP is that it is the end of an era of talking, and it is the beginning of an era of implementation. And that's where we all need to be.
Yeah, and I think that's my big takeaway so far in the very beginning of this COP. It is an implementation COP.
Yeah.
And so
really
we're seeing it, and it feels like that, doesn't it? It does feel like we're moving things forward, regardless of actually what's happening in the negotiating rooms. Things are moving.
They are.
But we need the negotiators to move faster. But
we do, and sometimes we have to recognize that, 2 steps forward, 1 step back is still a step forward,
Yes, absolutely. Ellie, that is wonderful. That's a great way to end this. 2 steps forward is still 2 steps forward. 2 steps forward, 1 step back is still 1 step forward. We'll get it. We'll get there anyway. But Ellie, it's been wonderful talking to you. I really am looking forward to going into this toolkit to see what it looks like. But until then, I think it's the end of day 3 at COP. So bye, everyone.
Thank you.